It is great to be here in Seoul. Our topic is going to be Unity Google Extreme, or I am told potentially it should be Unity Google XTM, or a television station around here. And I'm Dan. I have been on the Android team for 6 years. That is what I look like with a tie. So we're going to be talking about a lot of different things here that's going to appeal to a whole bunch of developers from different areas. We're going to be talking about the platform, about Google Play, and of course, about Google Play game services. Let's start with the platform. Cardboard VR is a huge part of that. We started off the year adding spatial audio addition to the Cardboard SDK, which allows your app to produce extreme 3D positional audio in audio environments ranging from tiny spaceships to huge caverns through a standard pair of headphones. Then, of course, we announced the Android N preview. How many of you have downloaded the Android N preview? Anyone? Anyone's tried it out? This year, we're trying to give you extremely early access so you can build and test your games against the latest generation of Android. Now, Android N gives you lots of new features, such as battery improvements and improved large screen support and more. Now, Marshmallow brought you Doze and App Standby to improve battery life. But now Android N is bringing you what I like to think of as Doze Extreme to take these ideas even further. And what we do is coalesce background activity. Doze Extreme now activates shortly after the screen turns off, and all network access and background jobs are restricted into maintenance windows that happen every few minutes. But in this lighter weight mode, alarms, wake locks, and Wi-Fi scans all happen normally. All of the other Doze best practices still apply, such as taking advantage of Google Cloud Messaging, Job Scheduler, and GCM Network Manager. What this means in terms of games is that there's going to be fewer applications coming up in the background and actually affecting the performance of your game. It's also going to mean when your game is backgrounded, you're less likely to get kicked out of memory. So this is all good for game developers. But it does mean, if you're a Unity developer, you have to make sure that your plugins actually continue to work properly in N. So make sure to test. And of course, this is all an extension of the now classic Marshmallow Doze mode. So if the device is stationary for a period of time, then this deeper Doze kicks in. Also, we're changing some things with implicit broadcasts. As part of our focus on something we call Project Svelte, we want to make background activity even more efficient. Most importantly to game developers is that if you camp onto broadcasts like connectivity action, your app will no longer be launched in response to a change in connectivity. And this is great because a single network switch used to involve with a whole bunch of apps waking up, and maybe 2 of them need to do something, which is bad for performance. And so we've now fixed this because, performance matters. Now, of course, if the app is already running, it still gets this broadcast. So for game developers, we have some exciting additions to Android N. We support, of course, OpenGL ES 3.2, which brings all of the goodness, or almost all of the goodness, I should say, of the Android extension pack to OpenGL. Multi-window feature, data saver, which is great because a lot of times consumers are concerned about how much data they're using. Notification bundling and customization. So again, if you have a Nexus device, you can download this today and try it out and see how well your games work. Of course, we're trying to make Android the best gaming platform. So we have made a major commitment to supporting Vulcan for high-performance graphics. And note that should be spelled V-U-L-K-A-N at the top there. And it's going to give us better battery life. It also gives you a lot more control of things like memory allocation. But let's take a look at what this means in terms of what we can run on Android. Now this demo runs both on desktop and on the Android with the same code, the same shaders, and the same C++. And these cross-platform shaders would have been much harder using OpenGL ES. Vulcan's render path system enables Fish Tornado to take advantage of multi-pass rendering in many ways it could not have with OpenGL ESLML. That's pretty cool stuff. So let's talk a little bit about Vulcan. Now, Vulcan is not just interesting because it drives lower CPU overhead. It also has some features designed directly for mobile devices. Now, most mobile GPUs are tile-based renderers, while desktop GPUs are immediate renderers. Now, when you render a 3D scene, you draw some triangles, and the GPU renders the triangle. And in an immediate mode render, that's pretty much how it works. They're rendered in the order and in the way you draw them in the app. But with a tiled renderer, what ends up happening is when you draw a triangle, the GPU then bins the triangles or sorts them. And then only after this is all done do we actually end up rendering it. Which is great because we can take advantage of very small, very fast on-chip buffers. Now this gets interesting when you talk about multiple pass rendering techniques. Things like cinematic effects, like tone mapping or exposure control or HDR. It means that the device has a lot more to do. Now in mobile, you can also do things like diverged shading, volumetric effects, where you might want to accumulate things like participating media across multiple passes, when you're making even more passes in your rendering. And on a tiled render, without Vulcan multipass, what ends up happening is that it actually has to pull that rendered data off of the frame buffer, process it again. But with Vulcan multipass, you can actually do it all as part of the same process, which makes it extremely fast. The benefit is that you save clock cycles and power, and you can do a lot of the cool cinematic effects that were previously not thought possible on mobile. So we're really excited about Vulcan, and we're really looking towards all of you being able to take advantage of it in Unity. All right, let's talk a little bit about Google Play. Now, how many of you have an app published on Google Play today? By hands? 2, 3, come on. All right, that's better. So let's talk a little bit about store listing experiments. Now, have any of you experimented with store listing experiments out there? Show of hands. So what's great about store listing experiments is that you can change things around, like icons and text, to see which is the best. Congregate, in their game Epic Skater, was our first store listing experiment partner. They went through 3 experimental icons before finding their winning icon. And this winning icon is still in use on both the App Store and on Google Play. So they actually leverage their work on Google Play store listing experiments to improve their icon in both places. And what are we talking about when we say experiments? We're talking about making conversion better. That means when someone sees your page on Google Play, whether you've driven them there by virality or by ads, that people are more likely to download your game. Now, 2 Dots took a really analytical approach to the experiments. You can see here that experimenting with the icon was very effective, followed closely by the short description. But across all of these elements, when you combine them together, they actually got a 30% lift in conversions, which is huge. Now, Congregate had such a great success with Epic Skater, they tried it again with Global Assault. Now, what's interesting here is they had already tested their control icon, the girl who looks kind of cool, with media buys. But it's so different being able to actually test in the store. I mean, who would have known that helicopters would be so much more effective than angry-looking humans? Now, Monster Strike is a very popular game in Japan, but they struggled in the West. And the designers knew that the core game mechanic would work well in the West, but the game just wasn't getting the downloads. So over a couple of months, Mixi was able to make a 68% improvement in their conversion on the Play Store listing page. So this is their new icon they created for the West. It's a more aggressive dragon, and it looks the viewer straight in the eye. they changed the description to reflect the family-friendly nature of the game. Now, here are what the screenshots look like in Korea for Monster Strike. But when they went to the West, they changed them this way. And this is important because it highlights the ricochet game mechanic, but it also makes the game displays less busy, which is more appealing to Western consumers. Now, of course, the video was changed as well to match Western aesthetics, and those were also really important in increasing conversions. But Nixie took it one step further. They actually extended the experiment into the app, changing the start screen and also the home screen. And this all made the game much more successful in the West. And here's what they had to say. The results driven by the ability to direct directly on the platform, as well as to quickly and accurately get test feedback. And that's great. So again, this can be a tool not just to help you in a market, but to also help you when you expand to global markets. Now here's something that's close to my heart, multiple APK. Now, Google Play has long offered multiple APK support, and this allows you to post different APKs that target different hardware variations. Most importantly, we can use it to support different texture formats as well as different binaries. So the basic rules for multi-APK are that we need to create APKs with a different version number with a distinguishing characteristic in the manifest that allows Google Play to filter correctly. Now, version numbers are actually used for priority when the same device can support multiple versions of the same APK. So what we really need to know is how to generate an APK with different texture formats, binary targets, and different version numbers in Unity. Now, for texture format, this distinguishing manifest characteristic is usually defined with the supports GL texture tag. And here are some, important texture formats and their associated strings. However, there isn't one for the most useful format, ETC2. And that is because ETC2 is just a requirement on devices that support OpenGL ES3. Unity nicely will add the appropriate texture format into the manifest for you. But if you select ETC2, you'll want to make sure you manually select the required GLS version to 3. Now, to do this without selecting the ES3 path in Unity, you can take advantage of manifest overriding by creating an Android manifest file in the plugins directory that contains just the uses feature for GLES version. This is also how you can add any customizations you might want in the manifest. Now, of course, you go to player settings to switch the binary or ABI type for Unity, which today just supports ARM v7 and x86. Now, Android uses a different directory for native libraries for each ABI, and Google Play will then filter based upon which directories are there. And of course, you also can change the version code in player settings. So, since version codes are used for priority when a device can run multiple versions of an APK, you want to establish a matrix, something like this, depending on which texture formats display your content the best. And this order isn't entirely unreasonable, but you may wish to have PBRKC have a higher priority than ETC2, for example. It is important to have x86 first, because most Android, with a higher priority, because most x86 Android devices can also run ARM7 code in emulation, which is both slower than native code and uses more power. Note that when you do this, you have to make sure to update all of these APK flavors at the same time. But it really, really improves the experience for your users in terms of quality. So speaking of quality, now we give you quality and design guidelines for Android that the Google Play review team tests as part of our editorial featuring process. Now most of these design guidelines don't necessarily apply to games, but the most forgotten one is to use the back button. It just has to work in things like dialogue. It's a requirement for getting your game featured. And if it doesn't work, most importantly, your Android users will get annoyed. And it's really easy to handle. You can just handle keys code escape and make sure your app does the right thing. And if you're only testing on Nexus devices, which I'm sure none of you are, but you might think that Immersive Mode, which hides the bar with the back and home keys, gets you out of supporting the back key. But remember that, of course, lots of devices have hardware buttons. One thing to note, though, is that Unity 5 makes Immersive Mode the default, but you should really only use it when you need it, like during heavy action, for example. And you can turn that off in the script like this, just by setting screen.fullscreen equals false. So again, unless if you're in menus, or if your game is a title that maybe is a simple kind of puzzle game, you might want to just leave this off because it'll make a better experience for your users that actually don't have hardware buttons. Another thing to consider is how you use Android notifications. And the spec here has pretty strict guidelines on how they should be used. Most importantly, you should make sure that your game isn't posting lots and lots of extra notifications. Only having one at a time is important. You can coalesce them with our newer APIs. Another thing to consider, of course, is that you only use them for content that's really important in the game. You shouldn't use them for things like ads that have nothing to do with the game. So again, use them as they're intended to let people know there's something important they might be missing in your game. And everyone will be happy. All right, I want to talk a bit about Google Play Games. Now, how many of you have actually used Google Play game services before? How many of you actually integrated it into a game? Anyone? All right, so Google Play Games provides things like achievements and leaderboards. We do cloud save, which is really, really important. We actually also have real-time and turn-based multiplayer, things like GIFs. But in the past year, we've been working very, very hard, adding player stats APIs, parameters, and video recording. But before I start, I should mention that we have a Unity plugin for Play Game Services that works across both Android and iOS, and you can find it here. Now let's talk a bit of how this stuff works together. So player analytics and stats is pretty cool. At GDC last year, we announced the first version of it, and we've made significant investment in new metrics and new reports. And most recently, we announced what we call the cohorts and the funnel reports. And this allows you to track the impact of new game features you've launched, learn where and why you are actually losing users, and understand the differences in the behavior between non-spenders, spenders, and big spenders. And we've heard from developers that player analytics has had a big impact on their business. Now, developer Max Games has been using player analytics to help understand where and why they're losing their players in Stick Wars Legacy. With that data, they can actually focus their game improvements to most efficiently improve retention. Now, Max Games used the funnel report to identify levels in Stick Wars with above average churn. And this is what their CEO had to say, that it's vital to balancing their game. Using the Play Games funnel report, they were able to reduce churn in level 6 by 40%. And you can see here in this graph, you get this nice consistent fall off, which is what you want. Now, perhaps Max Games should now look at level 9. So late last year, we launched the Player Stats API, which allows you to create game experiences that are tailored for every player segment. We provide segment data based upon percentile sessions and spend, average session length, and so forth. We also give you spend and churn predictions. And this is a powerful API for use to run your game as a service, and it's available for free just for integrating with Google Play Games. Now, what's cool about this is that our predictions are actually run through the same Google machine learning logic that has been, as you see, been so successful as an example of machine learning. Both you see with Google Photos, as well as you can see with things like what we're doing with predicting the next YouTube video you're going to watch. So we've taken advantage of this great Google technology. So developer underwater apps. has a great application of the player stats API using the spend prediction signal to determine if a user should see ads. So if a user was predicted to spend, they didn't see any ads. If a user was not predicted to spend, they saw ads every time they opened the game. Revenue from ads was 17% higher in the group predicted not to spend. And not showing ads to users that were probable to spend actually increased the number of IAP transactions by 15%. So again, tailoring your game experience to an audience using smart, predictive APIs. And we're continuing to invest in new predictions to make the player stats API even more powerful. And we're excited to announce that 2 new predictions are going to be available in the coming months. The first is a prediction of how much someone will spend in the next 30 days. And the second predicts the probability a user will become a high spender. And we couldn't be excited to see the creative things you end up doing with these tools. Now, let's talk about one final thing, your game as a service. You need 3 things to manage your game as a service. You need to dynamically make game updates. You need to tailor and optimize game experiences by player segments. And you need tools to deeply understand what is working and what is not working for your players. So we're excited to announce this upcoming feature, Play Games Game Parameters Management. It's going to be launching in the coming months. And this is going to make it simple to dynamically manage the parameters that drive your game. With game parameters management, you'll be able to manage your virtual good inventory and gameplay parameters, manage your different currencies, and create time and location-based value overrides. Now this is cool. The time and location-based overrides are particularly powerful. Many developers that offer time-limited content, like a new character or a weapon, still have to manually turn on and off these promotions. So if your promotion ended at 11:59 and 59 seconds on a Sunday evening, someone had to physically go into the office at midnight to turn it off. And if you're running a global games business, you'll want your promotions to run at locally relevant times. With our time and country-based overrides, you'll actually be able to specify country-specific start and stop times, and we'll automatically manage everything for you. So as you can see, you can actually manage things like costs and sales, and all the kinds of things that drive people back into your game, both in terms of purchasing, but also, most importantly, in terms of playing. And again, all of this is available for free in the developer console for Google Play. So we've been working with our partner, Concrete Software, throughout the development of the game parameters management feature. And we were inspired to build it because of the opportunity to make it easier, faster, and cheaper for Concrete to manage their game as a service. And this is what their CEO had to say, which is that game parameters management will drastically cut their setup time and issues while allowing them to create all kinds of promotions they couldn't previously. So they're planning to put it in all of their games. So we're very excited this is coming soon, and I'm really happy to be able to preview this to you today. Now I'm going to keep this slide up for a little while. But a lot of people don't realize just how important Unity is to what we're doing at Google. So this is a list of all the plugins we have today. Once again, we have our Play Games plugin. We have an analytics plugin. Of course, we have ads, and I'm excited to say that our ads plugin is going to very, very soon mediate Unity ads as well. We have our Cardboard Unity SDK, which allows you to create, of course, great VR experiences for Android. And we're going to be excited to announce more and more great stuff around Cardboard going in the future. We also have our Project Tango Unity SDK, which is great because we create this alternate reality world to put your users inside the game. And of course, we're seeing our first handset that's going to be announced that contains Project Tango coming very soon. And again, you can go to developers.google.com/games to find out more about this. So I know we've covered a lot of different topics here. Okay, first of all, we talked about the end preview, where you can download our current next version of Android, try your games on it today, see how they work, and try some of the cool new features we've added into the platform. including a whole bunch of work we're doing to make cardboard VR great. We also talked about Google Play and how it can actually help you to convert users who come to your page into downloads using experiments and the kind of success that developers have had with this platform. Of course, we have Play Game services. So you can go to our either games page there or down there and not only use it for leaderboards and achievements and cloud save and all of those great things that people really need in their games, but also the player analytics and the ability to actually use our player APIs to make changes in your games. And again, a lot of these things come for free just by integrating the SDK. So all of that stuff I think is really, really cool, and I just wanted to illustrate just how committed we are to making Android and Google Play great platforms for games. And with that, thank you very, very much. 감사합니다. And I'm now open for questions, so please. Give you about anything? Oh, question.
구글 앱에서 스마트 배너를 제가 사용을 하려고 했었는데요. 스마트 배너의 그 높이 사이즈를 알아오는 기능이 없더라고요. 그거는 혹시 지원을 해줄 의향이 있는지 좀 여쭤보고 싶습니다.
That's a good question. I'm not an ads expert. I will freely admit that, and that's why I didn't talk about it in depth. But that's a really important thing, and we need to be able to make sure that those are flexible for you and your app, and then you can easily query those sizes. So talk to me afterwards, and we'll try to get you an answer. Any other questions?
아까 전에 구글 플레이 서비스에서 있는 비디오 레코딩이라는 기능을 봤었는데요. 근데 그게 앞으로도 현재 어떻게 되어 있는지 모르겠지만 예를 들어서 에버플레이처럼 영상을 올리는 플랫폼이라거나 뭐 그런 것도 제공이 되는 건가요? 영상을 녹화해서 그냥 현재 사용자의 디바이스에 저장을 하는 건가요?
So there's a couple of things. There's where the platform is today, and what our announced plans are for video recording. So today, obviously we have the Play Games app. A user can go and start recording video anytime they want. We've also added an API to allow your application to begin recording video. And then the next step is actually going to be what we're going to have soon, which is going to be an API that allows you to have the camera recording the user playing the game while they're actually playing the game. So we're going to do both at the same time. So that's kind of the next step we're going in there, in that direction. In terms of where we're going as far as the ability to actually allow you to upload individual videos with the same game, I'm not sure we're doing anything there, but I think that's it's an interesting idea that we should actually look at, because obviously you can render really cool cinematic things that way, and I think that's really important. So I should talk to the team and make sure, to be honest. Because of course, I mean, you want to be able to drive impressions of your game, and that's what's exciting about being able to do that. So I'll find out what our plans are around that. Anything else? Anyone else?
강연 잘 들었고, 그리고 파라미터 관련해서 유저 이탈률이라든지 아니면은 국가별로 해서 인기도라든지 노출 빈도 같은 거를 알려준다고 했는데, 그게 그렇게 분석을 하고 사용자한테 보여주는 걸로 끝나는 건지, 아니면은 구글 쪽에서 따로 공식이 있어가지고 여기서 어떤 거를 좀 했으면 좋겠다라고 제안하는 수준까지 가는 건지. 궁금합니다.
Okay, by users, do you mean the developers of the game, or do you mean people that are actually playing the game?
Developer.
Developers. Okay. Yeah. So so currently yes, there's all the data is available inside of the developer console, where you can actually get to look. You can actually even go down into the individual time sequences on a kind of per user segment basis. You can actually look at individual sequences for individual users, obviously not identified, and you can actually see why exactly this happened, where exactly in the game this happened. So that's all available. And yes, the algorithms that we use to determine churn are actually based on machine learning. So it's not, there are a couple of things we use to say what churn is, which is probably the most relevant, which I think, as I recall off the top of my head, so don't quote me on this, that a user hasn't played in 2 weeks, I think is actually what we consider churn. If they haven't played the game in 2 weeks, then they're considered to be no longer an active player. I think that's what it is, and that's simply part of the internal algorithm that we're using to decide what churn is. I hope that answered your question. Anything else about Google? One of the things I'm actually really excited, and I think that I left a slide out, but I did want to mention because it's really, really important, is that we actually have added something called the Google Play Indie Corner, and this is really cool. So it's a place basically where you can submit your game, and we have this big list of indie games on Google Play that we're promoting, and then if the game does really, really well, it goes into our Indie Masterworks collection. So it's definitely something to think about. A lot of times people are asking me, well, how do I get featured on Google Play? One of the things is obviously to use all of our best practices, to make sure your game is really fun, to make it a great game. And then this is a way you can actually get noticed, is with the Indie Corner. So if I somehow managed to miss that slide, I really did want to mention that, because it's a really, really important initiative for us to reach indie developers and to help make you even more successful on Google Play. All right, well, if there are no more questions, again, 감사합니다.